All right, welcome. This is Clark with the Disaster Podcaster coming at you with episode 15 today. And we're really going to have a lot of fun because we're diving into some technology. So, all of my restoration nerds out there will be uniting and we'll love this episode. We are having a great conversation with two very interesting, great people in our industry. One is going to be Sully Cohen with DetectionTek, and that is the company that created and has designed the InstaScope and produces manufacturers. We're going to talk about the InstaScope today, and what that is the real-time mold testing, and I'm going to mess all that up, so we're going to go and let Sully talk more about that. And we also have Shannon Luce on. I mean, Shannon doesn't come on camera a whole lot in the public. She's got her favorite places where she likes to be, but Shannon and David are the owners of Luce Air Quality in Jacksonville, Florida, serving most of North Florida. And Dave's traveled around a little bit further out for that, but they're mold assessors and then IEP, and really just have really developed an incredible workflow around that, and really serving a lot of the public and the contractors in those regions and raising the bar. So, really going to have a really different kind of episode today. It's going to be a great thing. I can't. We've talked about this for a little while, and we finally got all of the stars aligned. So, come back right after this, and let's talk about the InstaScope. And welcome back. Well, we've got Sully Cohen. Hey, Sully.
Hey, Clark, how are you?
I'm good. Looks like you're in the mad scientist lab in Boulder.
Yeah, I am in the optics room where our instruments, their cores get aligned. So the light sources on the instrument where they get aligned and calibrated.
Yeah, you already lost me early. I'm kidding. And then Shannon Luce is here. Hey, Shannon, how are you?
Hey, Clark, I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks. Good to see you. Good to see you. Sorry we couldn't. Dave was going to be here as well, but Dave just got busy. So we're gonna have the Shannon side of this. So let's get started. We've talked about doing this for a little while. Sully and I ran into each other in Boulder 2 weeks ago. This is being filmed on August. I think we're the 3rd or the 4th today, and we ran into each other and said, let's make this podcast happen. And I'm always answering questions about DetectionTek and about InstaScope, and I half the time probably don't exactly know what I'm saying. So I really wanted to get rid of it. I have a lot of clients and peers that are like, what is that thing? And I think it's really good for our industry. It's a good evolution, and I'd like to talk more about that. So Sully and I talk about that, and then of course Shannon and Dave are deeply involved of IEP and how that product, it's one of theirs, they have one of themselves, and it's a tool they use in this industry. So I thought it'd be a great juxtaposition of two different perspectives, and maybe we can draw out some really good stories. So Sully, tell us a little bit about how we got here. Tell us about DetectionTek and especially InstaScope.
Sure. So InstaScope's core technology, the idea behind its light sources and how it measures particles signatures, was developed by the UK Ministry of Defence years ago. It came about during the anthrax scare as a means for trying to have a method for identifying it more quickly and more accurately when that was very heightened, the concern for that. But that didn't last, and the technology got applied to other uses. It got purchased by Droplet Measurement Technology in Boulder, and they worked on kind of just hardening everything about it, understanding it better, and turning it into a better product. And then from there, InstaScope got into the hands of DetectionTek. Before it was even called InstaScope, it was a wideband integrated bioaerosol spectrometer, very much used for scientific purposes. The name itself was full of jargon. So we wanted to, make it more commercially friendly, more friendly just in general, the language around it. So it became the InstaScope. And DetectionTek became a company built around the InstaScope in trying to advance that same mission that DMT had, droplet measurement, which was to make it better, understand the calibration and the alignment on it better, and then go beyond that and build out a library of particles that we can use to reference in real time to make decisions in real time on what particles are. And that's really what the InstaScope does, is it acts as a particle counter to start. And then beyond that, beyond just counting the particles and measuring their size and their mass, it kind of gets a fingerprint from their light refraction, their signatures. And then that gets matched to our library of particles. And through that, we can identify with high confidence and accuracy on a particle by particle basis as they come through the instrument, what they are. And that's where we can tell you if it's mold or not in real time in the air.
There's a lot of things going on there. It's a pretty complex unit, right? So there's a lot of, would you go as far as to say, is AI learning happening a little bit there? Is it kind of a learning device?
It certainly is a learning device. I wouldn't say it's doing any machine learning on its own, but the data that it collects is incredibly important in understanding the air around us and the environment to a more granular level that we haven't been able to do in the past.
Yeah, that data is everything. Data is statistics. So, Sully, how long? When did you come into the picture? Were you with the original DMT, or is it just with DetectionTek, or what's your history with the company?
So I started with the company 2 years ago. So it had already been DetectionTek for a few years at that point. I came on just to kind of wear hats and fill voids in the company. We're a startup. We're a small team. We're only about 12 people. So the startup world means just wearing a lot of hats and just applying skills, whether they're relevant or not, to a specific need, and then just trying to solve that problem or fill that need. So I actually came from a background in coffee. You can call me a barista. I'm definitely a barista, but I also specifically was building specialty coffee programs that fell under a certain sort of criteria of it was a Specialty Coffee Association of America definitions for what a specialty coffee bar looks like. Had to meet strict regulations, strict drink procedures, strict protocols around the workflows, things like that. So specialty coffee, but with a governing body behind it. So I helped build these systems, train folks, and just had a knack for quickly coming into places, getting them some well-oiled, workflows, developing their coffee systems, training their staff, and then moving on to my next project. So I have a systems mind. I'm good at building organized structure and helping to dial workflows. So although that was all for coffee, a lot of those general skills proved valuable at DetectionTek when I came on.
Gotcha. So we can get the InstaScope and it'll tell us if it's espresso or cappuccino. I'm sorry, dad jokes. Forget it.
We tried to merge the two worlds. I've gone to some roasteries and done some scans with InstaScope, just tapping into my network. People always talk about moldy coffee and not wanting moldy coffee. There's mold in coffee. There's mold everywhere. Sure. But it's just funny that I've tried to make those worlds overlap, but by force. It doesn't seem to happen naturally. But there's the InstaScope can be applied broadly to a lot of different use cases, and in assessing the environments that coffee are roasted in or that food in general is handled in. I mean, there's some real value there. So there is some real intersection there too.
Yeah, I've heard some really interesting applications of this. We can probably hit on that a little bit later. But I wanted to switch the camera and the mic over a little bit to Shannon. And Shannon, you heard my introduction. What did I leave out there? What does the world need to understand about Luce Air Quality? Because I listen, you guys are different level. You really are. I know you both well, but also as peers and as friends. And I see your accolades from your customers. So tell us a little bit about Luce Air Quality and how that came about.
Well, my husband, Dave, he started out as a restorer. He started in high school just doing on-the-job training so he could get out of school early. Worked his way literally from the bottom up. He stocked chemicals on the carpet cleaning vans and everything like that, and just worked his way up. And I wasn't really in the industry till we met. And like most technicians, he was working for other people and wanted to make more money. He wanted to find a way to, do more without just constantly, setting equipment, drying out structures, and tearing out the drywall himself. So that led to us opening up a restoration company. And we saw a need in our market in Jacksonville with IEP work, particularly with mold assessments. So we also started Luce Air Quality. We ended up closing the restoration company down because the Luce Air Quality was just really busy. We made better money with less headaches.
Yep.
So, and we filled a void in our market. So we just kind of exploded from there, especially after Hurricane Irma. That really got us on the map in our area.
2018 was it?
2017.
And also, Florida is a mold regulated state, so there's some complications there. And you probably had conflicts. You could not be a remediation contractor and then assessing your own work, could you? Or probably a little gray area, maybe.
So it is. The tricky thing about Florida is that we're regulated. We require separate licensing for assessors and remediators. But number one is nobody is actually enforcing that licensing. So if you turn anybody in, nothing's going to happen. But there are some ways around that legally in terms of if you're a GC or not. And then you can have both licenses, but you cannot do both services at the same property within a year.
Yeah, I got you.
So, when we had both companies, we didn't work on our own on each other's projects, but it just limited us, and so we closed the restoration business. We sold the rest of it out to another person in the area and stuck with Luce Air Quality. And from there, we've just been trying to rock and roll.
Well, from what I know, I know the two of you real well. You work great together. So you're a really strong team together. Not all couples that are in business together can say that. And I'm pretty sure that there was a magnetism that was drawing you to obviously, I know both of you now, and you both are always inside of a book and always learning more. And probably this was a bigger calling for you guys, and like you said, it was a need. So, and you became owners of InstaScope at somewhere in the last couple of years. When was that?
Yeah, we bought our first one in 2019, and we now own 3.
You now own 3. Cool. I mean, tell us a little bit about that. How big of an impact, how much of that do you use in your business? I mean, if you have 3 instead of 1, that tells me enough, but is it a pretty important piece around it?
Oh, yeah. So whenever we first bought it, I was scared half to death. Dave is the visionary. He's the entrepreneur, and I'm the one that pulls him back and brings him back here to earth. Yep. And so, when I'm looking at the price tag, I'm like, oh my God, if this isn't a good product for us, we're out a lot of money. But he convinced me otherwise, and we bought our first one. It made a huge difference. Yeah. The InstaScope is a market separator. You own one, you're immediately different and better than most of your competitors in your market 100%. Because you can provide on-site results. I mean, how many PRVs does that save time if I can pass a PRV right there versus waiting 1 to 2 days for results? So that really helped our business a lot immediately.
Yeah. Back to that for a moment. I think our industry, and probably most industry, change is hard. The world of commerce in America it still tries to stay stuck. I mean, we'd still all be on beta and VHS if some people had their druthers, but you've got to meet people where they are, and people have become more and more educated and concerned with microbial impact and mold. And we live in a world of now. I mean, social media, texting, the expectations are quicker. And if you're not delivering that, you're yesterday's news and somebody else is going to get it. So you just mentioned it, is people want results. There may be some limitations to what it doesn't do, but it does solve a need, and it gets that now factor so that we can move to the next step and take action. Because I know you deal with a lot of people who have health issues and concerns, and of course, in this world now that we've had a pandemic, I think it's only going to grow. It's going to expand. That perception, that hypersensis of these things is only going to get stronger, and I'm really looking for a lot of InstaScope technology to really develop from that. So, but I do know that we live, and people say, what good are results right now? Well, ask the people who want those results; they'll tell you. And
right.
I know people who've had InstaScopes. I don't have one. I've got some ideas. I would love to have a business, because I'm with you. It's different. It's like when the infrared camera came out. People are like, oh, I'm going to use my moisture meter. Okay, do what you've got to do. I'm still using both, but I now have infrared. I can save myself some time. I can do assessments quicker, better, get a better picture, and encapsulate what's going on here. And just back to what you said, that's always the question: is what does it cost? I'm sure we said that about carpet cleaning machine, truck mounts at one point. Truck mounts, $50,000. People have to get their idea around how that turns into a business. And if you don't have that vision, then you probably don't need to get one. But I tell people all the time, what does it cost if you don't? And so, get it and move forward. Sully, what do you say about any of those topics we just hit on? Do you hear some of the same thing from other users and things like that?
Sure. I mean, the money and time saver is the biggest thing. I had a customer tell me they spend $40,000 to $50,000 a year on just lab fees alone. I mean, when you're spending an employee's entire salary on something that can be cut out of the process, or at least mitigated, reduced severely, I mean, it's a no-brainer to me. That's an effective tool for your business, an effective solution for dealing with that problem. But that's usually where the highlights come from, is immediate insight, being able to share information with customers right away. Because if a customer is concerned about the space they're living in, and you can't give them anything the day you do that inspection, you're helping them, yes, but customers are needy, and customers want some sense of what's going on, if possible, quickly, to ease their concerns and make them feel like they can spend another night there without panicking. And InstaScope can help. Sometimes it'll tell them, no panic, you shouldn't be sleeping here right now. But in those moments where it can provide a little bit of just comfort, that they don't have to be alarmed, that's great to be able to deliver on the same day of the inspection.
Yeah, I always say that if you leave a customer's mind to their imagination, their fears take over. So
it's a good way to put it. Yeah, exactly.
Put some facts and some tangible results to squinch and push those fears down to what, okay, that's reasonable, because that's what they're looking for us as professionals in what we do.
Yeah.
And we are customers of other products. We want a doctor. I think I've got lupus. You don't have lupus.
Exactly.
You want a doctor to say, I did some tests, I need to do more, but you can relax. And I think that is a differentiator. Shannon said it. The other guy that goes to the job, he's got a clipboard, and he's got to make you wait 3 days. That's not going to do well when you're like, I found out today with the iPad.
Yeah. And in fact, he can't say much, or else he's liable to be held accountable for what he said. Just being able to speak anything to the state of the air in that space, and not worry about the repercussions of that is also important. You have an objective instrument giving you results that you aren't interpreting. You're just delivering the information from the machine, and it's really safe and easy to do, and that's pretty valuable.
Cool. I know we don't have one here. I think I mentioned, Shannon and Dave, you have yours. You have a great looking vinyl wrap on yours, and it's become, I watch your social media, it's become like a mascot and almost like an icon of your company. It's super fun. You never know where you're going to find it next. I think it's been on the moon. It's been, at the White House during the riots. It's been pretty funny to watch. I think Bernie Sanders was sitting next to it at one point. It was really cool, but it really has been you reverse engineered how to market this thing. And Sully, I mean, is she alone there? Have you found some other people that have really developed that into a character?
I'm really happy they're not alone. As special as the Luces are, and as special as their approach really is, there are other folks who are trying to have as much fun with it. And we have one user who has wrapped it in a similar theme to R2D2, but calls it R2D4, I believe. So you roll this unit around a home, and you're doing something it's serious. You're measuring someone's air quality, and that's a real thing. But you don't have to be scary about it. It doesn't have to be an intimidating process. If there are kids in the house and they see R2D4 roll in to the space, I mean, this is fun. Like, we have who's coming over and bringing these like robots, and I think it changes the customer experience. Because it's not a clipboard, it's not pumps, it's not commercial looking equipment. They've managed to bring some levity to it, and that can ease the mind. Once again, easing minds. Like, you go into a space and you give customers a sense of comfort and support right away that is hard to do otherwise.
Yeah, I know that at some point, and probably older, the customer can become involved with the assessment. So there's like, they see it happening in front of them. It's not like you said, you're taking it back to the lab, and people in the lab coats are going to get a microscope, and they're going to give you some vernacular that you don't understand. But this is happening in real time, and this, Billy's room is fine. That room, that kitchen is
Yeah.
good. Shannon, Dave told me about a funny story one time that I've repeated this several times. You get called to a business, and they felt like people just didn't feel well, and he went in and brought in probably a couple different things, but the VOCs were so high because far too much incense was being burned, too many candles, too many plug-ins, and he's like, if you do half of all that, this VOCs will go way down. But it just got a real high level. It's obviously it's microbial and spectral thing, but he told me that they just needed to hear that they're not just covered with mold and stuff like that. So, Sully, one question I have is ballpark. Do you feel comfortable? How many units are out in the wild? How many
Sure.
are in production, if you will?
So we to be completely honest, we're a small company and it's new technology and we don't have a ton out there. We have 112 units or 111 units in the field, and we are building 112 at the moment. So it's easy to keep tabs on exactly how many units we have, but that also means that our relationship with the customer is incredibly personal and intimate, and that helps with the support of bringing new technology to the market and introducing new technology to our users. It's new, it's different. We go through really extensive training, but the training is really the weeks and months of getting used to the instrument alongside our support team and myself, just having a conversation about the InstaScope as they adopt it. So we don't have a lot of units out there right now. We want to scale up and have hundreds of units selling a month. But right now it's a really cool time for the company and the customers because the relationship is so personal as we all learn about the market's needs and bring this to the market together.
Yeah. I know I was in Boulder 2 years ago, and I came by and visited, and I was floored at behind the walls, behind the curtain of the level of, scientists and PhDs. I met Dr. Hernandez and his work that's been done with this as well as other things. And
Sure.
there's just a lot more to it. And I think that's a story that's missing for people. And I would encourage people during this, after this, watch this, to reach out to DetectionTek and talk to you and have a conversation. It's simple as that. I know you guys don't want 1,000 units too quickly. You wanted to kind of perfect what it was, what it did, control that, and to have obviously testimonials. But I've watched them in action. I've obviously met you guys, and they're assembled right there. The parts come in, and you guys literally assemble, test. You said you're in an optics room, and things are calibrated out there. I've really watched you guys kind of go through that process. It's really impressive, really impressive.
And if I can jump in here too, you mentioned Mark Hernandez. He works at the University of Boulder, University of Colorado Boulder, and he's when I've talked about our library of particles that we've sort of classified as a reference tool for the InstaScope, he's the one who has helped us with those studies. We use labs in chambers at CU Boulder to aerosolize the different the different particles of concern that we want to measure their signatures of, and then so he's been a critical component in having the authority to conduct those studies in really accurate ways.
He's an impressive guy. Again, I met him and talked to him. And not only is he an academic, but he's actually very charismatic and he's passionate. And he's great at. I looked him up, when I was coming out, and he speaks a lot of places about a lot of things. Really, some really cool stuff there. So
he's enthusiastic, about helping people. He really does want to. At the end of the day, he really wants to support, scientific efforts that really help people, and that's why he is enthusiastic about InstaScope.
Yeah. Let's move to another section here, and I wanted to talk about. There's a lot of myths out there. I wouldn't quite say rumors, but a lot of people have their own perceptions about, and usually it comes from a place of not knowing too much. What are some of the myths that either one of you have heard of or that you would like to clear up right now about what the InstaScope is and what it is not and things like that? Is there anything that comes to mind from that kind of place?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, great.
We have a few choice other assessors in our market that really like to say the InstaScope is just a particle counter. And it absolutely does count particles like Sully said, but it does more than that. And that's one of my favorite ones because also microscopists are counting particles as well. So it's just, that's one thing to a lot of people, they try to minimize it by saying it's just a particle counter, and it's not.
Yeah.
You're paying for a lot more than that.
Yeah. You mean, so it's a laser particle counter, of course, but it also has the library to look at in a different.
And to build on Shannon's point, like she said about microscopists, any solid analysis starts with counting the particles. You just have to. But then beyond that, I mentioned there's other light sources in that InstaScope, and those light sources are what particle counters don't have. Those light sources are every particle that comes through that laser, which particle counters do have. They have lasers. 2 additional light sources hit that particle the moment it gets detected. So on a particle, whether there's a million particles in the air or several thousand, it doesn't miss any of them and hits them all with 3 light sources. And that signature that it gets back and immediately interprets and references and delivers insight on is where it really stands out from a particle counter. It's miles beyond what a particle counter is capable of doing.
Nice. Is there any?
I have another one.
You got another one?
Yes. We've also been told that only industrial hygienists are able to use this machine.
Yep.
And that one is very comical.
That's a good one. Sorry.
If you're involved in industrial hygiene, you know how there's a very clear definition of what makes you an industrial hygienist and what doesn't make you one. And all these people that are saying that you have to be an IH to use it are nowhere near an IH. But there's nothing that says only an IH can use a tool or not. An IH is just as capable, if not more, of using it than a mold assessor or a restoration technician. It all depends on your kind of training to use it properly in accordance with DetectionTek's instructions, just like using a moisture meter. You have to follow the directions for any tool that you use.
I've seen some very educated people who are in high positions use a moisture meter incorrectly.
Yes.
And so,
I wanted to say that, but you can say it.
But I literally, that goes with anything. And I look at, people with these myths, and there might be some hate in there, and it usually comes from a place of not understanding. But at least they're talking about it, and that's what I say. There, at least it's on the lips of people. There's a saying that I love by Henry Ford. If you had asked people what they wanted early on when he started to build a car, they would have said more horses. It's hard to be the first in the market of something, and you got nothing to compare it to, right? So, and I love that position, and I try to implement some of that and try to do things myself that nobody else does, so that I'm not compared to people. But that's just nature. People need association and reference to things, and they need, again, the sticker shock really scares people. It doesn't scare me. What is, we talk about myths, it may be the same question, things that are often misunderstood about what it can and can't do. Sully, is there anything that people say, does it do this? Is it a flux capacitor? Can we go back 20, 30 years?
One thing people do ask is, will it speciate in real time? And just to be completely transparent about this and blunt about the answer, no, it can't speciate. But the goal of the InstaScope is not to speciate. The goal is to measure the exposure risk of any given space. And you don't need to speciate mold to know that you have a lot of it in the air. You don't need to speciate mold to come to determinations about the air quality. If you have a lot of mold in a space, whether the person's allergic to mold or not, whether it's mold species that you specifically have a concern for and are looking for, you still don't want to be in an area where there's a source contributing a lot of mold. So what InstaScope helps you do is identify, are there higher levels in higher ecology or different ecology than we would expect? And then from there, you can narrow in on where that source of that exposure is coming from. Species doesn't matter for any of that process. It's just find the source, kill the source, mitigate the source, and then bring down that exposure level in that space. All of which you can do with the information InstaScope gives you.
I've heard this a lot too, and it's something that I find myself defending InstaScope a lot, because again, it comes from a place of let's just don't stay where we were. It's like an oncologist. You go to an oncologist, you really want to find out, do you have cancer? At some point it looks like you've got some symptoms. There may be some cancer there. There's risk. it requires more testing, or I'd like to know right away, this first simple test that we can do in the lab or the office says,
Sure, elevated white blood cell count. It's like
that's it. So
we don't know what cancer it is, but you have
it's going
that.
back to
Yeah,
what we talked about, is putting some people's fears and trauma and those things at ease with saying, we're going to get some more, but I think you're okay, or it's not as bad as you might be thinking. And that is a level of deliverance that is just,
Yeah.
But yeah, speciation is not, I mean, listen, no cancer is good. No mold is great in magnitude. I mean,
no, not if you're constantly around it. Yeah,
see a long term around it. I have a restaurant that's 2 blocks from where I am, and every time I go in there, I love their food. And I told the owner, I said, you've kind of got a microbial issue here. I've got a friend in Jacksonville that should come test this, but I've told them, you've got an issue. My nose is picking it up. Your employees are working here. Your staff, your regulars. It's in your air conditioning, and it's worth checking into. And so, whether people, you got mold everywhere. Well, but you're not in a closed environment. So, I like it for that. Real quick, kind of following that question as we move along. So, how does this fit? We're talking about indoor air quality. We're talking about assessment a whole lot. But how does the remediation contractor and the restoration professional, and this might be more for Shannon, how does this fit into their wheelhouse of a tool that a restorer could use? You mentioned a technician. I agree that there's probably some qualified technicians with training, with processes around this could do it, but how does this fit into that world?
I would kill it if I still owned my restoration business using an InstaScope. You know, restoration contractors, if you're following the S520, there's a very clear part of it that says that when you're doing a mold remediation project, you are supposed to do a post-remediation evaluation before contacting a third party to do a real PRV. Regardless of any sort of licensing or laws in your state, whether you can do your own PRV or not, you're supposed to do your own evaluation. The InstaScope is the perfect tool for that. It's also a great monitoring tool, whether you're doing a water damage project or a mold remediation project. So when I used to have a mold remediation company, I actually had a monitoring log for mold projects where I was monitoring the temp and humidity. I was also back then monitoring particle counts. You expect a natural graph with mold remediation projects. You start relatively high. During demolition, you're going to be a lot higher because you're kicking up particles. You also want to monitor unaffected areas to make sure they're not high. And then as you clean, the number goes down. The InstaScope would be fantastic beyond a particle counter at that whole process. How do you bill for that? Monitoring hours. Yeah. You add monitoring hours even on mold remediation projects, or you can add supervisor hours if your supervisor is the one that's doing it. If you might also be able to bill for the actual samples that you're collecting from the InstaScope too. So it would be a very valuable tool at QCing your projects to make sure you're ready for a post-remediation verification and also make sure that you're doing your job right.
Yeah. You talk about something that comes up every day in conversation, Shannon, is how do we bill for it? And that question always gets me, and I know where that comes from, but it's almost like we're asking permission for the industry to tell us, it's your business, it's your service, you've designed it, you've built this roadmap of results. You bill what you think the market will bear, and it's between you and your client. But our industry, what do you think the insurance will say about this? Well, if you ask the insurance, they're going to say you don't need that, but they don't carry the liability. They're not responsible for the IEQ of the place and stuff like that. So I really my goal, I would love to remove the question in this industry is, do you think the insurance will pay for it? One day they're not going to want to pay for anything. So might as well
the real question is, why should they pay for it? Yeah. What value are you bringing to them, to the homeowner, to the insurance company, anybody involved? What value is it bringing to them that they should pay for it? And that's where your own education as a restorer, you should be able to answer that question. If you can't, there's a lot of books that I can give you to read to where you know how to answer it.
I think, and Sully's over here like, Ollie, this conversation is crazy because he doesn't deal with insurance companies, but there's something to deal with. But they also, people forget that insurance companies, and I'm not doing a pile on, we have a shared client with the shared goal to make sure that they're made whole. They made a promise through a contract that they would indemnify and protect them as we have. And I'd like to see that happen all the way to the end of the job. And I agree with you that they don't like to pay for scrubbers. Well, I would like to
Yeah.
protect the people in that space, and scrubbers, air scrubbers that are
Right.
used appropriately do that. It's an engineering control, which is on the
Yeah.
hierarchy of the supply, things. So I don't need to justify that. If, like you said, if you know your art and you know your work, I don't need to answer those questions for less educated, but you do have to be able to justify it to the client, because if they hear that question from a third party, you've got to be able to say, well, that's a simple one. I've got this. So
if you're anticipating it and you know how to answer it without emotion, because a lot of restorers get very defensive because they've been screwed so many times.
Yeah.
They get defensive, and then they have a tendency to sound hot-headed.
Yeah.
If you're ready for that question ahead of time, you can answer it calmly and intelligently. Most of the time, it becomes a non-issue. At Luce Air Quality last year, we did 998 projects in that year, which told me that we were too short of 1,000.
You could have put.
Anyway,
you could have put a
I'm not
few in
bitter.
there. You could cheat a little bit, couldn't you?
What?
You could have cheated a little bit, just fudged the.
I mean, I could have, but anyway, a good portion of that we did bill insurance. We primarily bill homeowners directly or contractors directly,
Yeah.
but we bill insurance too. And I think we've been asked about the InstaScope from adjusters maybe 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
And we probably billed insurance probably 250 times last year.
Pretty good.
So, only like 3, maybe 4 asked, what the heck is this? Is this a real thing? And usually they're like, this is just a particle counter. And then that's a very easy question to answer and address.
Yeah.
And it was a non-issue after that, because we bring more to the table than just mold testing, just like a restorer is bringing more to the table too.
Well, you said something earlier, is a restorer, a contractor, when they're asked about their billing, they do get defensive and they take it real personal, but the carrier's not asking you from a place, they haven't been out to your job and checked the quality. They didn't ask the customer, how happy were you? It's not coming from that place. It's just their processes on how they bill, and their adjusters, they have to adjust. And so just
It's
take
just
it.
people ask me if I could give a discount. They have to ask.
Yeah, they have to. Listen, everybody does that with a car. You buy a car, you don't pay face value.
Mm-hmm.
It's the way the world works, right? So as a contractor, just know going in that I'm going to bill and systematically invoice the same general way every single time. I've done this with 200,000 people. I'm not ripping anybody off. And I like that you mentioned that, because I coach on that, is this is how I do it every time, and you don't have to answer that question. You want to see my files, I'll state this. So, Sully, you talked about you do provide a good bit of, and I know you do. I've got some clients that have InstaScope. You provide a good bit of support around that. I guess you guys you calibrate. So from a standardization, you guys calibrate the units a couple times a year or once a year. What does that look like?
Yeah. So every 6 months, we I wouldn't say we recalibrate the InstaScopes. We bring them in to measure the calibration and see if it's drifted at all, to bring it back within spec. And what we found is twice per year keeps those instruments within spec. And one of the things I like to talk about when I talk about the service intervals is that 6 months is the recommended service interval, but we recognize that InstaScope is a valuable tool for a business, and if it's the only one that you have, downtime is really critical. So we work with again, being a small company and having not very many instruments out there, we can work with people on a case-by-case basis. If they need to stretch it out to 7 months, if they need to bring it in early, we can work with people. And again, because we've measured that our calibrations do kind of stick for those service intervals and beyond them, it's more of a proactive measure than a recalibration need. So it's more just to make sure that the customer always can defend their InstaScope, has an updated calibration certificate to defend it if they need to, if an unforeseen challenge does present itself.
Well, I think it's like a vehicle in your fleet. You've got to service these vehicles, and sometimes they have to come out of to keep everybody safe and great, and doing, they got to come out of circulation to get tuned up, calibrate, their brakes or whatever it is. So I think that's reasonable. You just got to plan for that, right? Probably just.
Yeah, and I also want to add that we are always classifying particles, doing new chamber runs, trying to understand the living ecology of the air better all the time. And with new library enhancements or additions, we provide those free of charge to our customers and update their library accordingly. So part of that service also means that we're able to keep it up to the latest, the reference library up to date as well. And that all that research and all the benefits of those research just gets applied to the InstaScopes free of charge forever. So as we get better and develop the instruments, technology, and reference library better, that always gets translated to the customer as well, or our clients.
Cool. Well, I was sitting here thinking I have an answer for the problem with people who are down one. Just they need to buy two.
Just buy two.
Just buy two. They don't have that problem anymore, right? So
yeah, exactly.
That's probably not a unique idea, I'm sure. You kind of the last thing I wanted to hit on is, and you just kind of started to go into that real quick as we close out. What's next? Is there anything you can share with us about future iterations, some dreams, some idea boards, things like that you've got out there that you want to talk about?
I mean, pretty simply, we're working on always making the instrument better, as I mentioned, and the core light sources that detect particles is something that's very sound and works great, and we have high confidence in it. But new optical technology is being developed, and we're in Boulder, Colorado. We're in a hub of lasers and optics and that sort of world. This is becoming a hotspot for that. So we always want to incorporate some of that newer technology into our InstaScope, but we don't want to do it at a pace that obsoletes customers who get onboarded soon. So in the next couple of years, we have a goal of making the InstaScope smaller, more transportable, either via a backpack or just a more simpler to carry in a smaller footprint for a smaller price point. But that really is quite a bit down the road. One thing in the interim we're working on is a way to provide speciation needs for customers when they do find themselves at that hurdle. InstaScope jobs, I would say 95% of them, and hopefully Shannon can agree with this, can be done without the need for speciation. But in those moments where speciation is needed, for whatever that reason might be, I won't get into all the reasons that could be needed. You all know that. The InstaScope can at least provide the preliminary insight into where those samples should be taken. And then what we want to do is provide an additional sampling method, a secondary capture method on the InstaScope itself, that once you find that potential source area, you can flip the switch, turn on capture some cassette data, some samples, and then go through the traditional means of having to go to a lab and get that analyzed. But at least the InstaScope can help you bring it to the likely area of concern with more accuracy and precision.
The entire structure, not that side of the building.
Yeah. It just means that you could take one sample instead of three, and it could give you the insight that you need because the InstaScope helps you target where that sample should be taken.
I love it.
Exactly.
I love it. Can we expect in the next couple of years to have this thing available in a drone where you can fly around a property? I think David would.
Wouldn't that be?
David would buy
gosh.
one of those, wouldn't he? Just fly through a structure.
The outdoor air where that would likely live is a whole other animal to tackle.
Yeah, I'm talking about flying through, so much control to fly through. I tell my kids, we don't have flying cars yet, but we've come so far with what our handheld devices can do. And it's just the more people that use it, obviously, is what helps that happen. So, Sully, how can everybody get a hold of you best? Just for a demo, for a conversation, something like that.
The website, the phone number on our website goes directly to our support line, which is me. And I'm happy to also. I don't know how information usually gets attached to these demonstrations, but I'm happy to give my phone number and my email. And then the web form submission on our website will also find its way to me. So if you just want to go in, explore the website, and just request a demo, hit the request a demo link or request more information, it'll always find its way right back to me, and I'll be the one reaching out to you.
So in the description of both the YouTube version of this and the podcast version, I will have the DetectionTek, which is, by the way, DetectionTek is with TEK. It's spelled differently, TEK.com. And
we're very hip.
Very Boulderish.
Yeah.
We'll definitely put that in the description. And Shannon, what anybody in North Florida, if you're not currently have a relationship with an IEP or an assessor, it's something you should work on before you need them. You talked about you had a large loss this week with a private client that just all worked out, but if they had not already known you and they didn't know who to call, that would have been a very difficult situation. So it's, Noah built the ark when it wasn't raining, and I think the same thing with building a relationship with assessors and experts in fields. So how big of an area, if somebody listening is in Orlando, is Orlando in your wheelhouse?
Yeah, it is. So we have several clients that we work with in Orlando. We'll travel anywhere on a case-by-case basis. Obviously, for more large loss scenarios, we've traveled to Texas, to Tennessee, Georgia. But our main service area is Southeast Georgia. That's like the furthest north we'll go. We go out to Gainesville and we go down to Orlando.
Okay.
So our website has our service area, but if you're unsure, definitely contact me and we can talk. Because we like to work with our restoration contractors to help provide any additional education for their technicians, make their mold jobs better, and so we like to support our contractors too.
So is that Luce? What's the website actually? Because I'm going to put that in the link as well below.
It's luceairquality.com.
luceairquality.com. Go to look at their Google reviews. I've read them. There's some big cheerleaders out there for what you guys are doing, and you're doing it real well. And I think those around the country that are doing IEQ and assessment probably should pay attention and see if because I know you guys want the industry to elevate as well, like I do for the remediation side. So I appreciate you.
If anybody has questions about how to implement an InstaScope, because once you talk to Sully and you find out, wow, like this I need this machine.
Yeah.
Everybody's next question is, well, how am I going to work it into my business and make money off of it? And I'll be more than happy to have that kind of discussion with other people that are looking at that.
Love it. Once you're an owner, there's also, I think these are really popular things. On Facebook, there's a users group that's kind of solicited specifically for users. And there's a lot of people with a lot of different case studies and examples and then sharing, Sully's laughing. He probably says, oh, that thing.
It's a lot of honest conversation. It's a good thing to have.
Sometimes too much conversation, but no, I agree. It really helps users bounce it off each other and say, or I know some cases where these guys and gals have visited each other. Hey, let me come out. Robert has gone to work with Dean for a week in Minnesota and just found different ways to use this and different tools in the trade. And so I think these are the communities that are involved and built around these specialty tools and devices, and I'd like to see those grow. So cool. This was fun for me. Anything to close out on? Are we going to try to have 120 by next Friday ordered?
If this boosts us, then sure thing. Yeah, we'll get the team building them. Just get the orders in.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I wish you guys continued success, and it was great seeing you a few weeks ago. I'm glad we did this, and I hope
Same here.
I hope this raises some questions and helps us move into we've got Matterport, we've got infrared, we're doing a lot of really cool things. This is one of those things that Matterport a couple of years ago. Why do I need that? Now almost everybody has that, and that's the 3D camera imaging thing. So I think this will eventually become another tool in the toolbox. Just seeing these people figure out how do I market it, brand it, use it, and stuff like that. So but don't sleep on this thing, because you want to get in early and start maximizing its potential now. But Shannon, thank you very much. Tell David we missed him being on here, and
I will.
And you both have a fantastic week. Thank you both.
Thanks, Clark.
Bye.